In a house on the outskirts of a big city, there lives a musician named Brad with his wife Lexi, who works as a regular office worker and likes to start her day with a latte. He tells Lexi that she needs to avoid a certain road during rush hour today and use a small route nearby instead. When Brad brushes his teeth to start his day, he receives some disturbing news about an explosion in the city center. His growing concern about Lexi pushes him to try calling her phone, and after his call doesn't connect, Brad decides to go out. The road he takes is quite empty, but he can clearly hear sirens not too far away. Brad then tries to get a TV signal, but it doesn't work. He then hears a radio reporter describing smoke rising from the city center, and it's really happening when Brad checks it outside. So Brad tells Lexi through a voice message that he will pick her up from the city center and wants to know which road she will take so Brad can catch up with her. Brad starts driving to the city center with the radio on, where the announcer urges people to stay away from the incident area so rescue vehicles can access the road. A field reporter describes the chaos on the streets, where people can be heard screaming as they try hard to escape from danger. Brad then sees police blocking other cars, so he backs up and looks for another way, until he accidentally hits the sidewalk while turning to avoid another car and damages one of his front tires. So he goes to a hardware store to buy something to patch the tire, but is told that the store will close soon because authorities have ordered everyone to self-isolate, which makes many people panic buy. As a result, Brad leaves the store empty-handed, but returns again to buy several rolls of duct tape in response to reports of poison in the air. Brad then travels to a place where he sees police stopping the car, and they tell the driver that he must be quarantined because he has been exposed to an infectious disease. An officer then approaches Brad and suggests that he roll down his car window, but he tells him that he needs to go to the city center to pick up his wife. However, the officer tells Brad that all routes to the city center are now closed, and the officer warns him that toxic ash and smoke are heading their way. Shortly after, another driver gets out of his car. Then he tries to escape, and finally, he dies after being shot by the police. Brad then chooses to turn around because he's afraid that if he continues to the city center, the police will shoot him too. On the way, he sees a small child staring at a cloud of smoke. So Brad gets out of the car and tells the child to go home. When he arrives home, Brad tries to call Lexi again, but again there's no answer. Suddenly, a man named Alvaro enters Brad's house and begs to be allowed to stay here, reasoning that he's a janitor from the house next door, but his employer is not home. Alvaro adds that there are no more buses running, and he doesn't have his own car. When Brad tries to contact his wife once again, Alvaro plays a radio in another language and suggests Brad lock the door. Because Lexi is still out there, Brad hesitates, so he tells Alvaro that they will wait for Lexi's return before doing anything. But after waiting for some time and not hearing from Lexi, Brad decides to start a self-lockdown, where he and Alvaro move furniture, close windows and doors with duct tape and plastic. At that time, it's reported that people who tried to escape from the quarantine area triggered riots around the city. Brad then takes some blankets and drinks to leave outside for Lexi if she returns, and when ash starts falling around them, Alvaro tries to convince Brad that his wife is okay. According to news reports, antibiotics will soon be available to residents in the disaster-affected areas, and it is suggested that residents keep their distance from anyone affected by the explosion. Brad tells Alvaro that he feels bad about leaving his wife, but Alvaro tells him that he could get shot if he dares to go outside. It turns out, Lexi avoids death when the explosion happens in the city center, but the toxic ash seems to have endangered her. A few hours later, Brad hears Lexi crying while calling him from the front porch. With tears in her eyes, she begs Brad to open the door, but Brad hesitates. According to Lexi, her car was still a safe distance from the explosion, and she tells him that she can barely breathe now. Brad replies that he will take her to the hospital, but he still refuses to let her in. When Lexi begs Brad to let her in, Brad explains that Lexi is dangerous and chemically contaminated, so that's why Brad can't let her in. According to the media, those who were in the red zone during the explosion are ordered to be quarantined, but Lexi refuses to do that, so Brad suggests that Lexi go to the back of the house, where she can find blankets and water bottles waiting for her. A suspicion grows in Lexi's mind that Brad plans to prevent her from returning home, so she reluctantly tells him that there's a neighbor inside the house. As a result, Lexi becomes angry because Brad doesn't let her in, while he lets a stranger in. So Brad comforts the desperate Lexi by telling her to take deep breaths and wait for further instructions, and promises to stay behind the door with her. Meanwhile, the news reports that there's actually a virus in the deadly chemical that has not been identified until now, and is very dangerous. So Brad tells her that he will stay with Lexi as long as possible by leaving the door open. Shortly after that, there are reports that suggest people in the affected areas stay quarantined for several days. As a result, Lexi becomes impatient, so she starts breaking the door glass with her phone. Brad immediately rushes to patch the damage with a blanket until his arm gets injured on the window, so Alvaro comes to help, while Lexi keeps trying to force her way in by throwing a chair through the window. To calm Lexi, Alvaro tells her that he heard on the radio about an ambulance that will come to this area the next day. Responding to Lexi's question about whether Brad wants to continue living without her, Brad assures Lexi of his love and promises to find help for her. Brad then contacts the police, but an automatic reply tells him that there have been so many phone calls lately. Meanwhile, Alvaro tries to contact his wife, but there's no answer. Brad then walks to the bathroom to treat his wound with bleach, and when he feels it's not enough, he decides to use the entire bottle on his whole body. The next day, Brad becomes worried when he doesn't see Lexi outside the house, along with the sound of sirens. It turns out Lexi is watching police arrest someone not far from her house, so she starts running back home as soon as she sees police officers putting people in a car. When Lexi approaches Brad, she tells him that she has seen police shoot someone, so he warns Lexi not to let the officers see her, because that could get her in trouble. When Lexi asks when the doctors will arrive here, Brad says that Alvaro lied about when the doctors will arrive in this neighborhood to prevent Brad and Lexi from feeling anxious. After Lexi begs Brad to get her phone, he goes back inside the house to close and seal the bedroom door. After finishing, he orders Lexi to come inside the house. Brad states that he managed to contact an operator, but they couldn't provide information that could help. Lexi feels that Brad is hiding some information from her, so Lexi suspects that the authorities must have given him some disturbing information. Brad suggests to Lexi that they should talk about something else, and adds that no one knows for sure what's happening. When someone outside turns on a vehicle alarm, Lexi feels that it's a small child who turns out to be the child Brad met before, named Timmy. So Lexi invites Timmy to come inside her house. Timmy asks Brad why he can't come inside, and Brad tells him that it's because they don't want the ash to come in. So Timmy reveals the reason why he is covered with ash, which is because the fear of the bomb made him unable to return home, so he got covered in ash from the bomb's impact. When Brad enters the kitchen, Alvaro tells him that he will leave the house. Brad apologizes for his previous comments, but Alvaro's reason for leaving the house is that he needs to visit his wife. Although Alvaro can contact his cousin, the cousin hasn't heard from his wife for some time. After closing and locking the door, Brad knocks to let Alvaro know that he's free to go, and finally, he leaves the house. After that, Brad closes the hallway to the bathroom so Lexi and Timmy can shower to clean their bodies. Lexi then gets ready to sleep, but suddenly she hears a noise from outside the house, which Brad also hears, so after grabbing a flashlight, he looks at the backyard and sees a man there. So Brad warns Lexi to stay away from the back of the house, and after some time, the man outside starts knocking on the window and calling Lexi. After knowing that it's her friend, Lexi decides to open the window. The friend tells her that he will find a children's hospital where authorities set up airtight rooms. So Lexi tells Brad to come with her, but he explains that the authorities will soon distribute antibiotics throughout the area. The friend is skeptical the help will arrive in this area. So Lexi tells Brad that she will also take Timmy with her, showing that this is their only chance to stay alive. So Lexi makes an agreement with Brad that after her treatment is finished, she will come back to him. That night, a number of soldiers arrive at Brad's residence to determine whether he is contaminated or not. A leader then asks Brad to wait inside the house until he is examined. So he has no choice but to agree to fulfill this request. When Brad asks the leader whether they have medicine, he answers that at this time, they are only collecting data. Shortly after they find out that Lexi has broken a window, they ask Brad to collect samples of the poison that entered the house. After he gives the sample, the leader strongly recommends that Brad continue the self-lockdown and warns him to stay away from physical contact with his wife if she returns. The soldiers then put a red mark on the house, but they don't explain the meaning of the mark to Brad. After some time passes, when Lexi returns home, she tells Brad that the authorities have returned with all the child victims, including Timmy, and the authorities have given the medicine. However, the police arrest Lexi's friend and stuff him into a pickup truck with 4 other people. And that's when Lexi starts to escape. Brad then reveals to Lexi that there were military personnel who visited this house before, and when Lexi sees the red mark on their house, she becomes worried, feeling that it might be a bad sign. After moving to the backyard, Lexi starts describing the upsetting events that happened at the hospital, especially since the hospital is already very full. When sleeping, Lexi is shocked to hear something falling on the street. So she investigates it with a flashlight and finds birds falling from the sky. Because Lexi can't sleep, she decides to spend time listening to voice messages from family that she received. The next day, Lexi starts apologizing to Brad, stating that their fights over the past few days seem stupid given the situation they're facing right now. After Brad sees Lexi start vomiting blood, suddenly, two soldiers come from the corner of the house and take Lexi away. While Brad shouts at them, a soldier pointing a gun orders him to stay quiet. After some time passes, the soldier tells him that his wife is not hurt and that he did the right thing by separating himself from others. The soldier leaks information that the poison level in Brad's house has reached an unrecoverable condition and has become a breeding ground for the poison. In addition, the soldier informs that Brad has become a carrier of the poison, so nothing can be done to cure him. While other soldiers start surrounding the entire house, the soldier near Brad warns him not to resist. When Brad calls them for further questions, the soldiers start closing all the gaps with plywood and inserting a pipe into the house at the same time. Shortly after that, the pipe starts releasing an unknown gas, which causes Brad to start coughing. Brad tries to open the door while shouting that he is still inside the house, but the soldiers keep closing the windows and doors. As a result, Brad becomes very panicked, but he manages to break through the plywood on a door, only to find that his house is covered with thick cloth. He tells the soldiers several times that he is still alive, but they ignore him and continue to secure the cloth. Lexi tries to escape from the soldiers to help Brad, but the soldiers are able to restrain her and take her to a car. A soldier then uses his gun handle to hit Brad's head when he struggles to get out of the tent, until finally he falls to the ground. As a result, Brad becomes weak until he takes his last breath, and finally, he dies. After that incident, a nurse approaches Lexi and explains that nothing can be done to save Brad because the virus in the house is out of control. Right at Your Door movie ends with Lexi in disbelief about what happened to her husband. Then the nurse suggests that Lexi pray, and finally, she is convinced that she still has a chance to stay alive. Watch other movie recaps by clicking on the screen on the left.